Hello and welcome to my talk about gaming on Linux. This very beautiful slide with Ditch Windows is not from me, it's from someone else because I'm horrible at graphic design, but I found it very fitting for the talk. So if you're interested in the super short version about how well gaming on Linux works, the answer is pretty good, with a few exceptions. And in the next time, I will explain you how good and which games run good and also what the exceptions are and why. To give a very short primer, it's mostly because some companies don't want it. So there are companies that actually make it harder, and I will also explain which that are and one. Fortunately, it's pretty few. So to give you a little outline of the next 2 hours, it's mostly divided in two big parts. We have a theory part and a practice part. The theory part will be around 45 minutes. I will tell you a lot about the games. Which games run well, which not so well, in like a few categories. I will tell you about hardware, which hardware is good for gaming on Linux, which isn't. Also about which Linux I would recommend, which not. Then we have some time for questions. Then we have a short break. And then we have our live practice session where I will show you some examples of how I get games running on this notebook. Unfortunately, this notebook is a bit of a potato. It's from 2018. So I can not show you the newest games, but stuff that also runs on that notebook, of course. And then we have another block for question. Also, I want to be flexible, so these times are not in stone. You can ask me in between if you want, and then this question block may become a bit shorter. Yeah. So now, and some other infos. So this is a user talk. So the InstallFest people asked me to do one user-friendly talk and one super technical talk. The super technical talk is tomorrow. It's about Linux kernel development. And this is the end-user talk. So there will be very little technical stuff. I think I have 2 slides about how Wine works internally, but most of this is very user-oriented and just like the practical effects of things, not so much how it works inside. And this about the honest part, I think that's relevant because often I feel that the Linux community sometimes oversells their stuff. Like they overpromise everything will work absolutely flawless, and then people like my mom try Linux on their notebook and then a few things don't work and then they are extra disappointed in Linux. And I want to do it different. I want to be honest. That's why I already said in the beginning, 90% of stuff, most stuff works pretty well, but some stuff just doesn't, and I think we should be honest about this. Yeah. So who am I? I'm the guy from Germany. I'm very thankful from the InstallFest people for inviting me. I'm actually a Linux kernel developer, so my personal topic is tomorrow. I'm also kind of an academic. I'm doing my PhD in university about network stuff, and I'm doing external PhD, so working and also doing PhD. I've been gaming on Linux for 14 years, so that's relevant, but mostly Age of Empires 2, so because that already ran very well 14 years ago. And also my free time stuff, I do like really anime, art, and tea, mostly black tea. So, okay, now to the meat of the talk, actually. The games. So this is this overview section where I try to categorize the games. So I would say around 20% if you go on Steam today, and Steam platform will come more in future because that's the one with best support. Of the important, around 20% have native support. I will show you lots of examples later. And then also, I would say around 90% of the games, they are run either native, just with the compatibility layer, that's like the Wine or Proton, I will explain more later, or with minimal effort or compromise, like less than 5 minutes of effort, and you don't have to have much technical knowledge. And this includes especially all good old games. And old is everything older than 4 years is usually no trouble. Then we have 5% of games with some effort and compromise. We have 2% with lots of effort and compromise, and then we have like 3% of games that just don't run at all. Those are these exceptions that I mentioned. And we will talk about all of these categories in more now to give you a bit clearer understanding. But this was the overview. So the native ones, Minecraft runs native, and I found a lot of people that say it runs better on Linux than on Windows. And it's relevant, also Factorio native. And I here have a list that's from steamdb.info. It's a pretty good site that basically, like Steam and Valve, they have their API open, and SteamDB takes all the data, and you can get it there. Some great thing that you can get from SteamDB is also the price history of games. There you can see when games are cheaper and when they are more expensive, so when will they be cheap next time. But they also have this list of most played Linux games, and there you see Counter-Strike 2, you see Dota, you see War Thunder, you see Left 4 Dead 2, so that's a lot. And this is the one that I will show you later, because it runs on my notebook. So that is a lot already, and you can also compare this with this is the most played Linux games list, and I also had a screenshot somewhere of the most played games list, and there's quite some coverage. Like most of the most played games are also available on Linux today, which is pretty cool. And I will later explain why it is that good, because it's usually no coincidence that things are good. So now the next category, the minimum effort games. That is where you need Wine or Proton, and the games with the Platin or Gold setup. I will explain those in more detail, so what those are, and also what this Platin means. It's often the older games, like the Age of Empires, for example, or other stuff, because sometimes you have cases then when a game was made for Windows 98 or Windows XP, it's pretty hard to get it running on Windows 10. Steam sometimes helps you, but if you want to get it running directly, it can be quite the effort, and there Linux is often actually nicer to you, because in Wine you can say, emulate Windows 98 for me, and then it just works. And to give you some examples of games in this category, I have Crysis, I have Age of Empires, that also includes the Definitive Edition here. I have every Fallout game, Red Dead Redemption, GTA 5, The Witcher 3, to give some big examples of this category. So now what I've already teased. Why is the situation that good? It's mostly because of the company Valve and Gabe. Gabe is one of the CEOs of that company, I don't know for sure. So he said this, I will let you read, some time ago, in 2013 actually, on the LinuxCon. Where there he said Linux and open source are the future of gaming. And actually he meant that, and he and his company invested lots of money into making that a reality, and making gaming on Linux more and more realistic and possible. For example, he also created the SteamOS. He created this Proton that I mentioned before. Steam runs on Linux flawlessly, and also the Steam Deck, a portable console, handheld, you might know, also runs on a Linux. I think it's an Arch Linux port currently. They started with Debian and then switched to Arch Linux. So there is some commercial interest and some money in making the situation better, so that helps. And there's also some technical reasons that make it easier. That are the two technical slides that are coming now. For one is, a lot of game engines actually already support Linux. For example, the Fallout 3 and all the Fallout games, I think they run on an engine called Gamebryo from a separate company, and that company actually made the game runnable on Linux. It's then just when another games company takes that engine and develops a game with it, they add their extra stuff, and sometimes then it stops working on Linux. Sometimes it keeps, but the thing is, even then, when they add extra stuff, it's pretty easy for Wine and Proton to make it running on Linux again. And also the thing is, if one game engine already runs on Linux, then all the games developed with that engine can run on Linux too. So the fact that the games industry has mostly concentrated on a few engines is actually something that makes that easier. Then also lots of libraries. Also, if you have a few libraries, it's easier to just port one library and then have like hundreds of games on Linux than if every game did its own thing. And then Wine and Proton, which I will explain very soon. Yeah, so here. So these are the logos, so that you've seen them. And also there's a fork in the middle because Proton is a fork of Wine. So what that means is that Wine is an open source project. They still develop their thing, and I think like 10 years ago, Valve came and did a copy of Wine and now develops it as their own project. That's their fork of Wine, but they still share back and forth code. So that works pretty well for both communities, actually. Now the most technical stuff. So how does Wine work, or why does it work so good? This is if you would play Fallout New Vegas natively on Windows, the normal situation. And the naive way to do it now would be to include an emulator here. So when you see, here you have an, whoopsie. You have your operating system, you have your hardware, here you have your game. And here the game interacts with something else. And the naive way would to put an emulator in between. So the problem of the setup is every instruction in the game binary has now be executed by this emulator, and this is very slow. So a classic emulator, people tried that in the beginning, it just doesn't work well. So can we do something else? And the answer is yes, because if we look back, here the game is like directly on CPU plus RAM. There's nothing in between, and that's on purpose, because the binary of the Fallout engine, most of it is just code. Like, it's not really operating system specific. So 90% of the binary just runs on your hardware. So for example, if in Age of Empires you have your units fighting and your 10 archers and your 10 horses, and the archers are firing, all the calculations if the arrows will hit and when they hit how much damage they make, this is totally operating system independent. This is stuff that just runs on the CPU, and that's usually around 90% of the calculations. So the idea was we can just keep that, let that run directly, and then there is this other part here, this interaction with the operating system. That is something that's usually that's called syscalls, system calls. That's whenever you need a file, because for files you need to ask the operating system or you need stuff from the network. So that stuff is difficult. So Wine just goes in here. So the idea is Wine just is a wrapper for the syscalls, but most of the calculations are directly on the hardware. And that's why you have so little performance penalty. And that works pretty well for most cases. So that is also the Wine stands for Wine is not an emulator. That's exactly that. And that's the difference between an emulator and a wrapper, and why wrappers are so much more performant. But we have the games where you have some compromise, some effort. And one of the reasons is Wine cannot cover everything. So the silver category. So the Wine project and also the ProtonDB project, you can go on their websites, and then they have listed games with, or software in general, with gold rating, which has very good support. We had before, or even platinum rating. And they have also silver and bronze and also broken rating. So the silver is stuff where we have to put in some effort. That might be to go back. when this is not enough, so when sozusagen so to say, there is some part of the operating system API that Wine just doesn't cover, and then you might have to install separate DLL files, reinstall and take them for Windows or something like that. Because yeah, Wine does not and cannot cover everything. Exactly, and then the special libraries thing that I explained. Sometimes you also have bugs in the Windows API. So the game expects Windows to have bugs, but the problem is Wine has done it correctly. Wine has done it like the official documentation says, but Windows didn't. But the games did expect the bugs, so they don't run well with Windows. Some cases are sometimes then, but usually Wine is also pretty good at re-implementing the bugs, so that often works. And there are also sometimes some dirty tricks that you have to do to make stuff work. One thing is external lobby clients. So sometimes there are old games, especially strategy games. I think Age of Empires was the case with Woobly. Supreme Commander was the case with FAF, where the company basically died, but there was a huge community that still loved the game. And then they did create a own networking servers and their own lobby client to do all the multiplayer stuff. And to get these lobby clients working and then the communication between the lobby client and the game and all inside of Wine can sometimes be a bit tricky too. So the example that I just mentioned with FAF, there is the thing that the FAF client is in Java, so it runs natively on your Linux, but then the Forged Alliance game runs in Wine, and then you have to do this inter-process communication between the client and the game, where one is outside of Wine and one is inside of Wine. These are all the things that work, but they are some hassle. That's why they are in the silver category. Yeah, the tricks I've already, and copying the LSF, sometimes you have to provide special launch options. I will also give you one example of that later in the praxis part. Sometimes you have to write a little own script or copy it from somewhere online. You have to set some environmental variables or some settings in the game to make it run. But these are all things that you can find online very easy. So on the ProtonDB page, they usually have like an entry where they very easily explain what you have to do to make this run. And also sometimes some features might be not there in this category. And yeah, I have here Supreme Commander I have in there, because I've done that there myself, but also Adobe InDesign would be another example that I found in this silver category. So then games with lots of compromise, I found Roblox. I've never played that myself, but I did some research, and it seems you have to use the Android version and make that running on Linux, because the company doesn't want you to actually play it on Linux. And there's some tool called Sober that sometimes runs. And also, I found that funny, a VPET simulator. I don't know what it is, but it has browser rating. Okay, so another question is, do these games have performance penalty, or how big is that one? And the answer is usually it's tolerable. That's also usually in the silver category, or maybe some of the gold category games. You have 10 or 20% of performance penalty, but it is usually a bit tolerable. And it also got better and better over time. So Vulkan was one software that improved that a lot, but also Def and Tsync, and also the libs in general are getting better and better with time. So that's pretty nice so far. Good. But then we have, these are the ones that I teased before, yeah, games that don't run at all, or have an extremely heavy performance penalty that makes them actually unplayable. Those are mostly games that bring with them their anti-cheat tools, and that is because the cheat tools or anti-cheat tools, they usually run in the Windows kernel, and they are very dependent on specific Windows kernel stuff. And it's very, very difficult to make them running. And those were sometimes games that actually did work on Linux for a few years. And then the companies said like, yeah, we bring you a new anti-cheat tool or a harder anti-cheat tool, and then it stopped working on Linux. League of Legends was one of these cases, actually. PUBG Battlegrounds is also one, Valorant, Apex Legends, and for all it's the case, Fortnite too, with these anti-cheat tools. Usually, yeah. But also one pattern you might notice is that these are, well, maybe except for League of Legends, but mostly games that younger people play. So those are like the 18, 19, 20-year-old shooters and games. But also, unfortunately, some of them are pretty big, which is a bit uncool for our community. So what about Call of Duty, I thought, because I don't play it, but it is kind of important. So I have a list. It's very random. Many of them are supported. Some are broken. I think it's, I don't know if it's chronologically, because here you have Modern Warfare with 2023, but here you have Black Ops. The sorting is kind of random. So everything with Valve anti-cheats usually works. But with other, like the Ricochet anti-cheat, it doesn't. So it's like 70%. It really depends if your Call of Duty is in there or not. I will let you read a bit. Okay. Other good franchise, Battlefield, was around the same. I googled and it was some work not, and it's also depending on which anti-cheat software where they use for their special case. So, why are the bad things bad? Often because the companies actually want to prevent it. And I have there EA doing EA things. I have to say, however, one positive thing. I don't know if you've noticed it, but I think 2 weeks ago, EA released the source code of the old Command & Conquer games, which is pretty cool. And which is the first nice thing I remember EA doing, actually. But you have to point that out, too, when you want to be fair. Yeah. I think one reason that might be semi-understandable why companies don't want to do that is because they have all their support staff trained to help people with Windows problems, and they don't want to hire new support people for Linux problems. So for them, it might be even a bit easier to manage if they just have Windows users. Yeah, and these big companies, they are EA and the other Ubisoft, the other one. Yeah. Good. Oh, what about Discord? It works flawlessly, so that was easy. TeamSpeak 2, I haven't used that in years, but yeah. So overall, summary, pretty good with a few stains. And yeah, we have to accept that we don't get the kiddie shooters for now, but it is what it is. So, about hardware. Because games don't run without hardware, so that is kind of important too. Overall pretty good, and nowadays, it hasn't been always like that, but it got better and better every year. So CPUs are no problem. So every CPU Windows runs on, Linux runs on too. There's not really a thing there. Then everything else, headsets, SSDs, monitors, gaming mouse, keyboard, it's no problem. Maybe if you buy very, very special gimmick stuff, ultra new 700 color rainbow LED keyboards, vibrating chairs, they might not work, but oh no. Okay, so more important things, graphic cards. What about them? AMD, no problem. So we have two big companies making GPUs. One is AMD, and for AMD you have the AMD GPU driver that is open source. It's pretty good. That's very cool. NVIDIA, rarely problem. The driver is closed source, and a lot of people in the community don't like that. It doesn't play that nice with Valence, and it can be a problem if you like to customize a lot. But in general, it works. So if you that is the question was, what about Intel? most I know, so up until a year ago, Intel with the i915 driver worked very well on Linux. Then the question was about very new ARC GPUs, and there the answers I don't know. I don't have one myself, and I have not researched that. Okay, so if you buy a new graphic card, buy AMD. If you have an existing NVIDIA card, that's okay too. How about gaming notebooks? Meh. I don't like them. I personally don't recommend gaming notebooks, not even with Windows. I'm a PC Master Race fan. I think notebook is for working, PC is for gaming. And the thing is, a notebook should be light and with long battery life, and a gaming PC should have lots of power, and that doesn't go together with light and long battery life. So it will always be some Frankenstein thing. So that's my opinion about gaming notebooks in general. If you really have to be a gaming notebook, you really should Google Linux support first on that thing. And you also shouldn't buy super new notebooks, because a lot of small stuff often takes extra drivers that Linux does not have from the beginning, or the people have to implement first. So wait a bit longer, a bit older notebook, and always Google first. And also I know there are companies selling you Linux notebooks, and maybe even market them as gaming notebooks. There's a German company, Tuxedo, and I think System76 is an American company. I've heard not so good things about them. They also have, they cannot really avoid these problems in the previous point. So that's that. So you can also, like, even my small notebooks. Many games, a bit older games, also run on normal notebooks. So my recommendation would be to buy a normal notebook, buy a ThinkPad or something like that, and also play on that, but mostly play on your gaming PC. Yeah. So Chromebooks, that's something I found out. I thought those things are dead, but actually Chromebooks still exist. They are from when you with this Google Chrome OS, and also they do have special Steam support. So they have there's their own Steam version for Chromebooks, for Chrome OS, and on Proton you can sort for games with Chrome OS support, which I might show you later. So that is cool, and seems to go well if Chromebooks are your thing. But I've never had one, so I don't know. So now to the software, which Linux? Because you might have noticed we have many Linux distros. That is actually, I think, one of the biggest problems we have in our community, that we have so many distros. And there, my recommendation is just use Ubuntu. It's really that easy. Because you should use one of the LTS versions, then you have extra low trouble. This is the default distro every vendor assumes. So Steam and Valve assume that. And also, if you get your games elsewhere, usually the Linux distro that most of the industry has kind of agreed on as the default is Ubuntu. So you are kind of safe with Ubuntu. And it has a normal desktop too. That's important because the Steam OS and some other special gaming distros, they don't have a desktop, so writing emails or doing office stuff, which sometimes you have to do, might get a bit more difficult. I personally like having a classical desktop and my classical apt stuff. But if you feel experimental, it was recommended to me, Basit it's called. That's a open source version of SteamOS, which I will explain later a bit more. And the thingy stopped working. Anyway, now. The thing is, it has a very heavy app isolation, a bit like Androids who you have less control over your computer. Maybe if it's more for a console thing, I can recommend it, but if it's also a desktop PC to use for other stuff, I would still go more with the Ubuntu thingy. Yeah. Genau. What about SteamOS? It's for consoles. It's not really for desktop PC. So a bit like the Basit thing. It's not that relevant, I assume, for the gaming PC for you people. Yeah. Okay. Same. So, we are kinda quick. I think I said 45 minutes, and we are 35 minutes. Okay. So, do you have questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do I have to repeat the question for online, or does the microphone get the questions? Oh, okay. Good, then I will repeat it. The question was about GTA 5. You said that it did work at some times, but it does not, and especially the multiplayer does not work anymore. Honestly, that could be. I've never played GTA. I have that from an article which was like the 10 best AAA games on Linux. And another article, they both said it runs, but they were around a year old or so. So it might be that nowadays it might be more an example for the silver category and not so much for the gold category where I had put it in. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Then let's start our little break. That's the doing it part. So actually, it still has a few slides still. And one thing that I think is very important to understand, it's just tinkering. So it's no science, it's no coding. So all the stuff of making the games run is more like you Google, you find something, mostly on ProtonDB or WineHQ, you try that thing, usually it works, like in 20% it doesn't work, then you try something else, then you scroll down, then you try something else, and usually the third, and at least the second or third thing usually works. So it's a lot of trying around, and you don't have to know coding for this, and you usually don't also need to have a deeper understanding of operating systems usually. So that's kind of a relief. And also, it's usually non-destructive. Like, you are only tinkering around with one game and with maybe one folder where this game is in and one Wine installation. So you cannot really destroy much of the rest of the system, usually. Okay, very broadly, there are 3 ways to do this. You can let Steam do it. That's, in my opinion, the best option. That's also what I will show most. You can do it yourself. That's usually... Oh gosh, I'm sorry, people. It seems we have to repeat it since the break. But I can start now. Good, okay. So, hello and welcome back from our break. Now the doing it part. It actually still has a few slides, but most will be then in my Steam and my terminal. So the good part about this whole business of making Windows games run on Linux is it's just tinkering. So it's no science. You don't need deep understanding of your operating system. You don't need coding. It's mostly trying around stuff. Usually you find very good stuff in ProtonDB, WineHQ, or some forum entries, and usually, most cases, you try the first thing you find there and it works. In like 20%, it doesn't work, then you read a bit more, then you try the second thing, and when it's bad, then when in the silver or bronze category, you might need to try the third thing. But usually the internet is also pretty helpful there. And what's also very good about it, it's non-destructive usually. So you're tinkering around with this one game, with your usually one folder, and you can only break stuff there, but also the game doesn't run already, is the starting condition. So you're not really breaking anything, and usually you also don't break the rest of your system because it's kind of localized. And I will also later show you Wine prefixes. That's like different Windows installations, but they are very small, and you can have different Windows installations for every game. So if you break something, you only break one Wine prefix. So that's also, so you're pretty safe with that, which is also a nice thing. So there are generally of doing this. There are 3 ways in general. So the first way is let Steam do it. That's the best option, and also the option I will show you to you 1 or 2 times. Then there's also the do-it-yourself option, like with Wine. I had a question in the pause, like, can you make all CD-ROM games run? And that would also be in that category. When you put in your CD, navigate to it in your file manager or your terminal, and then you start the setup exe with Wine directly. That would be that. And then there are also helper tools. These helper tools are like these, like Play on Linux, Lutris, and Heroic. And my recommendations on these are Play on Linux is mostly dead, so yeah. Lutris, I should maybe explain a bit more what these helper tools do. So they often include shell scripts that do all the tinkering and that do the stuff that is in the ProtonDB entries or in the forum entries for you. And they can be a help, but in my opinion, often these scripts and stuff are a bit outdated or don't work anymore. And I usually prefer, if I'm already in one of these silver cases where I need such stuff, to actually do it myself. Because then when later something changes, I can also change it easily. And when I use Lutris, I'm dependent on Lutris. And another reason is I tried to test a bit Lutris in preparation for this talk and installed it on my Debian here, and it didn't work on my first try, so that was no good impression either. And then there's also Heroic, which seems to be similar. I haven't tested, but I think it's worth mentioning. It's something like that. Some people say it's better than Lutris, some people say it's worse. Might be worth trying. Okay. Then there are tools that are called Wine tricks or proton tricks. Those are tools where you can also install some libraries or some DLLs into your Wine prefix, so in your virtual Windows. These are tools that you actually use a lot when you do it yourself, but they are like smaller tools. They only do a little bit compared to these tools above. Okay, so what do we have more? The Wine prefixes, I already explained them. I think we will see them later in one example. They are very easy to set up and take very little disk to RAM space. So with these, it is pretty easy to have every game in a separate Wine prefix. So it's like every game gets its fresh new Windows install. So that's something that helps a lot. And it seems to be this is the end of my prepared presentation. So now let's get our hands dirty. And now it's actually good that I have my notebook set on mirror. So let's open up a new desktop and start our Steam. Why Steam starts, I can tell you a little joke that I had to think of, and of course it has to update. Does anyone of you know the movie Death of Stalin? Okay, it's about the death of Stalin, and they have one short episode at the beginning where they do a classical concert, and Stalin hears that concert in the radio, and at the end of it he calls them and says he wants a recording of that concert, and they say, yeah, of course, no problem. And then they found out they have no recording, and they are in a pretty bad situation, and now they have to do the whole concert again, but all the people left, so they also have to find new people to fill the room, so it sounds the same and no one notices. And they are all super, super stressed, but in the end they manage it. And that reminded me of before when I had to repeat the first 5 minutes. So that's but it was a nice story for having Steam launch. So this is your Steam. I guess a lot of you might know that from your Windows. It's the standard gaming platform today. Here you see the games library, and then I hope it's big enough. Here is one interesting thing to say here. So here you see lots of games that I bought. This is my account, but I did change my name a bit for here. And you have a little penguin here. And if you click that, it only shows the games that run on Linux, which is still a lot. You can see here. I hope it should be big enough on YouTube. Can I make it bigger? Of course not. And a lot of the games I showed you before are still available here. You can, if you compare it here with the scroll bar, it is still some difference, but these are the games that really run like natively, that have been developed and coded for Linux. And so the first one that I wanted to show you, that it really, really works and it's kind of modern, is Civilization. So yeah, it would be the same experience of waiting until it runs if it was on Windows, because the notebook would be equally slow. And to give you a little overview, we will walk through all the categories of games I said before. So this is one example of the native games. Then we will have one example of the games with no tinkering, where you just say use Proton and that's it. Then we will have one game with some tinkering. That will be Supreme Commander, by the way. And then I will also show you the without Steam way, the direct way. And then there are also a few other wine tricks that I can show you depending on the time. Okay, you might not get the sound. The thing is, I just want to really prove to you and to the online audience that it really works. So here you have Civ 6. I honestly, there is like Civ 7 out now for a few weeks. I have no idea whether that runs or not. So these are no problem. We still have to wait until we can click here. So as you can see, you have the full game running and stuff works. Okay, so much for Civ. Okay, so I have some notes so for Platinum I wanted to show you another game that I liked a lot. It's called Star Ruler. And currently we have the Linux native games only here. So it might not be here as rusted as not here because it's a Windows game. So that's from the very good, the Platinum category. So if we, but the thing is, I do have it. I bought it once. It's here. Yeah, and it's the white means it is downloaded. I have downloaded it in preparation because I didn't know how good the internet here will be. But it's currently not installed, and now the normal process would be to go to the browser of our trust and do starruler proton db. And there we find an entry. And there it says Platinum, which makes us happy. And there we have this entry, no issues. And there, right, we have this Proton version. And then we just use that Proton version there. And how we do that is we do right-click on here. Actually, sometimes my Steam GUI hangs, which is no good marketing, but it's only on that notebook sometimes. Okay, so you have right-click properties on the game, which I did. And then in the properties here, you have compatibility. And then you do that checkmark here, force use of a specific Steam compatibility tool. And there you can choose the Proton versions. And then you just use the one that you had on the browser, which was 5. And okay, it's this 5010. But that thing behind the minus, that's the patch level, that's not that important. You can, if that's a -10 or -3, that both works. The numbers at the front are more important, so we use that. We have it customized. And then, I mean, I had it prepared, but now it still wants to download something. It says update queued. Well, we let it update. Let's hope it won't take too long. But I mean, then it's a more realistic example, actually. We can also check what exactly Steam is downloading currently. So there was a Proton hotfix. So that's, you can say it's a good thing that they're fixing their stuff. You can say it's bad that they need to do hotfixes. So it's something that was there. And it seems still we have to wait a little bit. And here they say 50 seconds remaining. Yeah, I'm sorry for that little delay, but that's also realistic, actually. I mean, the good thing about Steam is they have very fast servers, because when they sell you a game, they want to have it really quick. But we are still limited by however the Wi-Fi, how good or bad it is here. Okay. 65%. I can, in the meantime, maybe tell you a few of the other things I've prepared. Is the terminal readable for you people? Is the font too small, too big? Is it cool? Okay, nice. Then we have that out of the way for later. Ha! And it's finalizing? Yeah. Okay. And the thing is, now we have this play button here. And I think also if I do the little penguin again, then now we have Star Ruler here in our penguin category, because I made it work. So this is one of the Platinum games where you don't have to do really much. So I started it. That would be Vorführ effect. Yeah. Gosh. now that I press the stop button, it yeah, okay, and it seems it didn't get my stop button click, so that is the game, it runs. I will also show you some gameplay. I'll make it a bit less loud. So it has loaded. There you see, we see our stars, our galaxy. Here we have our planet. We can also see our ship designs and stuff. So it works. Fun thing is here you get the menu with F10 like with Emacs. Okay. So that was one of the Platinum games. Or of these 90% Platinum or Gold category. And as I said, most of the games in here are like this. So you Google them, you see the Proton version and you use it. Okay, so next would be a game with a bit more tinkering. And for this I did choose Supreme Commander. And if you Google that one, we want this one, the extension. You find here it says gold, but then there's the thing. I would say it's gold if you run it alone, but it's silver if you want to run it with this external lobby client I explained before, this FAF client. Then it might be more silver. For now we will run it only in Steam. And here you see something that is a bit weird, like this guy, he uses a custom Proton version. So not the Proton that comes with Steam, but something else. And that is something we don't like, because installing custom Proton might be extra work. So we look further if there is some entry with normal Proton here. And it's also quite recent, it's 6 months ago, and it says runs okay. So we can try that. And that is similar. The thing is, I still think and remember that these options are something that we need. But I would like to use the normal version and not something too fancy. So what I will do now is I will use this version, but also this show you how to implement these things here. So we go back to Steam. We check where we have it. We have it here. It's also downloaded already. And we go to properties again. And there with I already have the Proton 9.9.4, which is here it says 9.9.2, which is also okay. And then what we need is these special launch options. And how we do them is here. Here in general you have launch options, and you can put them in here. And what they basically do is telling the Proton internal stuff when Proton launches this about locking semaphores, if anyone knows that, but how Proton tries to do some of the Windows API stuff, how exactly. Because for this game it's better to do it like this. And if we start that now, so we have the set, we can close it, and we can start it. As always, some potato time. But it should run. Actually, Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition is also in the gold version, where you just need a special version in some settings. You see it is a little bit laggy, but that's mostly because of the notebook. So here it would be starting. So with this version oh gosh. I thought there would be another screen. I didn't know we will land in game that quickly. Okay. This would be the tutorial. I do assume, yes, no one of you is that interested in that. But there was one other thing that I wanted to show you with Subcom, and that is like, what if you want to use Proton but without Steam? And there is an option to do this, and this is what I will show you now, because there is an other special, here it is, option is this one, and this option, when I add it, will give you the shell script of the exact command that Steam used to start Proton with all the settings and with this game. So if you have the shell script, then you don't need Steam anymore. So we add this extra parameter here. It's the proton dump debug commands equals 1. And if we add that, and now again we have to start and wait, but to already tease you, then in temp proton user will these scripts be that we are looking for. And with these scripts you can also then start other games, for example, which is very helpful. But you have to start it once. Before, so that you have those. So that's a waiting game again. Okay, so now let's see whether they are where we want them to be. So the thing here is that temp proton. So that's already bad. There is no. We have Steam. Maybe it's in Steam. That's one of the parts that I didn't prepare, so now that comes biting me. So what we can do is Google what this option does nowadays. Maybe the folder name changed. Weird. So this one here still says that's from 2018. Temp proton. It seems we need this percent command percent thing here too. So let's try that. Yeah, and at least once in Steam. Yeah, that was also in the official guide of this FAF client that you have to run it once via Steam also to get some of the config files. And then later you have this run script, and then you put that run script into the special client. Yeah. And another percentage. And I'm wondering if we need also something after the percentage thingy, just so that Steam is happy. Maybe we also need the full screen thingy. Let's see. Okay, that is a resolution that we can. So also let's also use this one. So we are maximum compatible with what the internet says. So, and again. And I mean, that's also realistic, because that's just the tinkering that I meant, the trying out. I will repeat the question. The question was, what if you want to buy the game from somewhere else than Steam, and how is the support there? The short answer is that's where Lutris is better, this helper tool I mentioned before. They have integration with the GOG launcher and with the Epic Games launcher. So you have your games in Lutris, and when you click on them, Lutris first starts the Epic Games launcher and then your game. And I think you can also use Lutris to do what I'm doing here now, like to get Proton to run your Epic Games games. So it also works, but it's often like a bit more tinkering than the Steam way. So I did present the Steam way first to make it a user-friendly talk, but the other options work too, and I will show you one example later of without any launcher of a very old Age of Empires 2 installation that I prepared especially for this talk, of course. But it might be the same with other launchers, and some little addition also, there is a small launcher that's called Mini Galaxy. That's for good old games. That's also nice. Because good old games also has a lot of Linux native games. Yeah. So now I'm a bit more optimistic that we have the scripts here in temp. But we haven't. That's sad. That's no good presentation. We have a Steam folder. What's in there? We have these PIDs. It's a bit sad. Temp proton. This one? Ah, I'm using 9, but the thing is I did that before and there it worked too. Huh. But I mean, we can Google that, we can... If it's different with proton 9. Worst case would be... here, it's 4 years ago. It would be bad if they have changed it or if I made a stupid typo. Huh. Proton dump debug commands equals 1. So unfortunately I cannot tell you. Yeah. Oh no, that's sad. But thank you for researching and helping. So what he just said is that they did remove this in Proton 9. Which is sad because I think that's a really cool feature. I actually wanted to show you these. Do you know if there's any replacement now? Oh. Okay, so there seems to be some way to still get this information, but it's more complicated now, so we cannot show it here. That's sad. Maybe it's also something I should have prepared, honestly, but happens. Okay, but so much about this. Then next would be the example for playing stuff directly and without Proton and without Steam. So that is the Age of Empires 2 I want to show you. And there I have something in my home bin folder, and that is this ROFE, Age of Forgotten Empires. That was a expansion I user made first that came out like 10 years ago. And that's a little shell script I want to show you. Here it's a bash script, and now here we define the variable wine prefix, and we export it to make it environment variable. That basically defines a folder in a path to a folder, and that's home Richie wine ROFE, and we can check that one out. If we go to home, we have this wine ROFE folder here. So this is such a specific wine prefix. That's some folder I just created specifically to install this Age of Forgotten Empires in there. And it is really just that easy. So you can create a folder, then you in your bash you define this variable, and when you then run some wine command like this here, it will automatically install Windows in that folder. So here it already exists, of course, but we could do that for now. For example, when I do this very short name, installfest wine prefix folder. Now I go to bash because you also might more have bash. And when I do this line here, and you also do home Richie. Oh, I've called it installfist, lol, but it is what it is now. now I have this variable, and when I now do some wine command, like for example, it's also wine cfg, it will install wine in there and take a little bit, and the windows in there. So that's here. And wine cfg is just a config window where I can configure some of the wine settings. And this little window you had with the updating, it also comes if you have an old prefix and you installed a new wine, and then a year later you start something from that old prefix, you also got this little window. Because when wine got new, some Windows things in that prefix also got new. So you have this little wine config window. So here you can configure this Windows now in there. And we could say the default is to emulate Windows 10, but you could also tell it to emulate Windows 98 or something like that. And you also can tell it, which is kind of funny, to emulate a virtual desktop with some size. Some games prefer that, to have this, and other things. And with the virtual desktop, it's pretty small now. You will see it if we do apply, and we close it. And if we then do wine cfg again, we should have that virtual desktop now. Yeah. So that is our newly created wine prefix here, and you could of course do all of that also with Proton, and you even have your start button, but it doesn't have a Windows logo on here. It has this little wine glass on there, and there you can also do stuff now. But and here also are the drives from the perspective of this wine version. And let's close it. And what I also can show you now is there was one command, I don't know it by heart. It's this one, Wine Explorer Desktop Shell. That would give you the whole a classical Windows desktop, even without any programs open. So that is here. Yeah. But so that was a little bit of detour about wine prefix. Oh, I can also show you what's in this ordner or folder now. So if we go to the install fist folder, you can see here it has created this rec files. This is to implement the registry. And there's also then this drive C folder with folders you might know from Windows. There are the program files folders and also the users folders. So, and it also always creates a user with the name, with your name, basically. And there's your standard Windows stuff. And we can also check now, because I'm curious about that too, how big is this? If we DOS, oh, okay, 1.3 gigabytes. That's bigger than before. But I mean, a full Windows 10 install is even more. So maybe because of that. Now I exited the bash. I'm back in my fish. I will do another check from the. Oh, it's really that big. Okay. So that's maybe an argument. So what I told you before, that they are very small and you can make many, many of them, might not be as true anymore. Where there was a time where they were just like 100 or 200 megabyte, but it seems they got a bit bigger. Okay, but back to what we had here. So in this little shell script, we declare this variable and define it to an existing folder, where I have once created that folder and then I think inserted a CD and done this wine prefix and did the install there. And now what the script does is just go into a subfolder there, and then it calls wine h2x2. And if we execute that script now, it should just start h. And I also wanted to show you this because when I prepared this yesterday, the folder was like 8 years old because I haven't played this Age of Empires version in like 8 years. And of course my Wine version now is a lot newer, so this Wine there did a lot of updating. And it does bring you some bugs when you start it, but the good thing is in the end it still works, and we will see that very soon, hopefully. Because this screen makes me a bit nervous, that's why I said hopefully in this tone. Okay, but these these are normal. I had them yesterday too, and when I clicked them away, it then worked. But it's in German we call this Vorführeffekt. Is this good? No. There was one. One. Yeah, but the thing is, if you click all them away, then Age of Empires starts. It's kind of funny. Can you see it? Oh gosh, because so actually it runs. So that is when you have a 10-year-old thing and somehow you can make it work. But also in my defense, if you have a 10-year-old Windows installation and try to do something on that, it might be just as broken. Okay, so that's that. Good. What else had I planned? I wanted to show you a bit more about the Steam internals and Proton internals. So if I go to my home directory and into my Steam directory, I think it's .steam. Yeah, in my home directory there's .steam, and there you see lots of stuff, and there you have to go into I have to go into Debian installation because it's Debian. I guess on Ubuntu it's something else. And there you have the Steam apps folder. And somewhere here are all the Proton thingies. I think they are on common. Yeah. So here are the Proton versions I have. And interesting that it's a beta. I did choose 9 to have something reliable. But let's first, the Proton 5 was the one we used for Star Ruler. When we go in here, so this is actually very simple, like if you install Wine and go into the folders of your Wine installation. And I think the final, so here you have your Proton, and I think you could technically just start it. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. That is important. But this one you can see. So now it's separate. I'm sorry. I first have to get my... Yeah, okay. Have you seen it before when I wandered into the Steam folder? Should we do that again? Ah, okay. Good. Then I will show it here. So in my home folder, you have this .steam folder. There is Debian installation. On Ubuntu, it might be something else. There you have Steam apps, common are important folders, and then we can go back. There are a lot of games that I've installed and are just here. I think all the games, common has all the games that are not Valve games, so not Source Engine, are actually here. So this folder can get pretty big. So for me, currently it might be like, okay, 38 gigabytes because Civilization is here, and the Supreme Commander and the Star Ruler we played before. But also the Proton games are here. Games. Proton is here. And if we go in the Proton 5 folder, this is very comparable to if I have Wine installed, the Wine installation folder. We can also, Arranger is a file manager I like a lot. So if we look in here in the dist, here we have, the binary is still called Wine, which is fun. Here you can see it's really a fork from Wine. But when you use this Wine binary, it's actually the Proton version of it. So I think you can use it relative directly, but it's not in your usual path of your distro. So what this script that we didn't get, what I wanted to show you before, is mostly just using this Wine executable, and then also some more environment variables, and then it starts actually the game exe with this one here. And you might remember I also showed you Wine prefixes, and Steam also does create a own prefix for every game. And I think these prefixes are here in compat data. And this PFX stands for prefix, and you might these drive C and rec folders, you might remember them, because this is the same that was also in the Wine prefix that I just created before. That is here also because, Steam creates for every game our own prefix. That's why it takes a few seconds at the beginning, and those numbers here are I think the IDs of the game in Steam. Okay. So that was one thing I wanted to show you all. And then Wine CFG and Wine Explorer I showed you too. ProtonDB. A few more things I wanted to show you on the ProtonDB side. That's also where I got my statistics from, because here you get a dashboard, and here you get some overview of their entries. So for example, here you can say of the top 1000 games on Steam, like the top 1000 people play. And here you get, are they Steam Deck verified or not? And then you get if they have medals, but I think that's not that interesting as this one. So here with this you get so many are platinum, so many are gold, so many are silver. So that's where I get my rough statistics from before. You also see here this Chromebook ready, what I meant, but that's still pretty new, so there are not that many games entries there. Okay, so what else is worth showing here? There's something. I think it was just on the front side. Here there was this. Here you see the with the deck, and also that pretty new is Chromebook, but it's 176 is not that much. But it's still some good games that you see listed here. Okay. What else? That maybe later. There are a few Wine commands that I find worth showing. So first, if we go back, if you remember these this Wine desktop command I showed before. Previously, I showed this in this special new Wine prefix that I did specifically for this talk. But now I'm in my .wine. So if you have nothing customized in this variable, it just assumes that in your home directory there's a folder called .wine, and that's your standard prefix, which we're using now. And if I do this here, we will see that I have over the years, so this is also a pretty old prefix, but still works, a lot of stuff installed in one prefix, which also worked. And here on my classic desktop, I even have desktop icons. But the thing is, the resolution is a bit small. I should configure that bigger, but so you can install multiple tools and have basically your Windows in here, like my IDA Pro. And if I close this, what I also wanted to show you, you can also do Wine regedit. And then you can, if you want that, well, sometimes you might need that, edit the registry inside of this specific Windows of this prefix, so to say. Because, of course, they have to re-implement their registry. And all this would theoretically also work for Proton or for a specific prefix that one of your games is home in. Okay. What else? You also have your Wine Explorer, I think. That's the basic shitty Windows Explorer. Yeah, you have that one here. And oh, and also, if you think, yo, all my editors on my Linux are too good, I would like a bad editor, please. You can also have the Windows Notepad, actually. It's Wine Notepad. I don't know why they re-implemented that, but they have. And what sometimes might also actually be useful is Wine CMD. That is the Windows shell. The thing is, here we start our desktop also if we don't need then. But here we could do our Windows batch script now if we want that. And that starts just in my terminal emulator, but it still starts the desktop in the background. But we can close, yeah, we can do exit. Okay. So they are sometimes useful. I think I've shown you all of them. Yeah. More about Wine prefixes haben wir auch. Sometimes you need a 32-bit wine. So there can be the situation where your whole operating system is 64-bit, but you have a 32-bit game that also needs a 32-bit Windows for some reason, and you can install Wine 32 for that. And it is possible on your Linux to have a normal Wine and Wine 32 in parallel, and that works. So on Steam, usually Steam just takes care of that, but if you have to or want to do that yourself, oopsie, that's weird. You can do apt install. I think it was Wine. Yeah, Wine 32. So there are also images for that. Okay. We have ProtonDB. I should also show you in short WineHQ, because I mentioned them. So that's the side of the wine people. And they also have their The registry of gold games or silver games. Genau, the AppDB is it called. And there, for example, you have your list of platinum games, of gold games. So in general, Proton is a little bit better. So if you have the option of doing in Proton or doing it in Wine, you should prefer Proton. But if it's already gold or silver in Wine, that's enough. Then there's no need to go for Proton. Exactly. And what more? I think, yeah, it is worth showing also you the SteamDB info that I mentioned before. There you have a good overview of a lot of data inside Steam. Here most played games, but you can also there was where I got my at the beginning from my Linux games. But something that I want to show you because it's pretty interesting is also you can click on a specific game and there you get the price history usually here. And you get a graph, so when the game was cheap and when the usual sales events are. So that can be pretty practical too. It's a little trick. Okay, so that would be everything from me. We still have 15 minutes left. Any questions from you? That is because I had another question round before. Yeah? There was actually a few years ago that the Epic Games Launcher that my girlfriend really wanted to have because I think Epic gifted you one game every month or something like that, and she, okay, every week, and she wanted to have them all because of course I installed Linux on her notebook, and she wanted to have them there, and that was like 3 or 4 years ago quite a struggle to make that run on, because there was also Lutris support, and I remember I got Lutris and I tried a lot, and sometimes the launcher started a bit but not really, and then you got really bad debug info, and I think with one option you could start the launcher but none of the games or something, so that was a big mess, but I think it's better now from what I know. Now Epic works, and because it's also supported in this Lutris tool, and I think this Lutris tool is okay, it's just that for one, I really prefer to do it myself. And for two, I think I also got an old version on my Debian. I just did apt install Lutris and I got a bit old version and didn't run. But if you want to play the good old games or Epic games, I would recommend that Lutris. Still, although it was one of those examples. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Honestly, virtual. Do you mean specific virtual reality games, or is that? I think they do. I had a group of friends that our LAN parties we played a lot with Linux, and 2 of them were very much into VR, and I think they got lots of stuff running actually. But I've never done myself. I don't own VR stuff, so it's like a semi answer. Sorry, I can't. Yeah. Okay, I think we're done then. Yep. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. I hope I could help you for gaming on Linux.